I just saw a cat run across the path. That means that today has to be good luck, clearly. I started making this project in the spring of 2020 when life was just truly awful. I was completely isolated and really into TikTok at that time and wanted something where I could just bang out a project, get my energy up, something simple.
Had the rest of the weekend free and a mighty need for a new frock. I have not made myself a new dress for 2 years now, and this weekend that is going to change. I have fabric. Some nice cotton fabric I've been hanging on to for 10 years. I have some lining fabric, and I also have pattern that I drafted a couple weeks ago. Haven't even done a mock-up of it yet. I don't care. We're going into fabric. We are just Wild Westing this sewing experience. So stick around and we'll see how quickly I can make a dress happen.
There was a distinct parallel between starting the project, kind of at the start of lockdown, more or less, and finishing the project, which actually happened almost exactly a year after I started. Originally, I wanted it done by my birthday, which is the beginning of May, and I did finish it before my birthday of the following year. I managed to get it done a week or two before my birthday in 2021, almost exactly a year after I started to work on it. Yeah, it took that long for a simple basic dress. But I think this project turned into more than just sewing a dress, because once I switched over from get her done as fast as possible, let's use the machine, hoorah, and more into the let's have a pleasant, relaxing, meditative sewing experience, my attitude to the project changed entirely, and it wasn't so much about getting that end result, even though I did want the dress itself, and it turned more into if I'm sitting in my armchair watching reruns of Survivor and feeling sorry for myself, if I can at least stitch a couple inches of small, beautiful stitches and I've made a little bit more progress on the project, at least that's better than having done nothing at all.
But above all, I wanted something comfortable and easy to wear, something that wouldn't require the lot of layers that even the simple and easy to wear Regency dresses could often have, i.e. a shift, stays, petticoat, etc. I didn't want all of that. I wanted something that in these blazing hot desert summers I could just throw on as one single garment and, take the trash out, snuggle with the kitty cats, work on my sewing, work on my painting, something that I could actually use in everyday life, as well as something that could pass for mostly historically accurate, or as historically accurate as something can be when you get rid of all the layers underneath. I personally like to think of maybe some fashion-forward ladies of France who were trying out all the brand new fashions and, wanted to get rid of all those hot layers. I don't know, I'm rambling now.
I used a good old Faber-Castell colored pencil in a bright pink color. The cotton is opaque enough that you can't see the colored pencil through on the right side. I'm drawing on the wrong side of the fabric. And I've drawn out my seam lines of the pattern, and I've left enough space in between each of the pieces to account for as much seam allowance as I want, and I can vary up the seam allowance depending on the section of the garment that it is. And to save time, I am also going to cut out my lining fabric at the same time. I will just lay it underneath, making sure that the grain matches up, and then I'll cut out all my pieces and cut them out together.
I cut out the pieces for the bodice and the sleeves in this fashion, but for the skirt itself, it was pretty simple. I just used rectangles that went along with the grain line and the stripe of the print, and so I didn't even bother making a pattern piece for that, but just measured the length that I wanted and then cut those rectangles and balanced them on the dress form later to find the exact shape that I wanted at the top edge, the sort of raised waistline edge of the skirt itself. So that sort of shaping was something I worked out on the dress form later, and therefore didn't really film the cutting portion of the skirt. So this here is just the bodice and the sleeves. And this was when I put away the sewing machine, took out my housewife, my needle and thread, and started to sew by hand. I began work on the bodice with the center back piece, taking the fashion fabric and the lining pieces, turning in and pressing the seam allowance along the top neckline, and then using the felling stitch, stitching those pieces together along that neckline edge. Once that was done, pressed and beautiful, I could then take my side front pieces, which came around to the side back, so they're kind of just like side and front pieces all included in one, and stitching those to the side back seams before pressing them towards the front and pinning the shoulder strap pieces in place so that I could then take a look at it all in the dress form and assess where to go next.
So right now I'm just going to trim this seam down a little bit so that now that I've lined up the actual print, I want to make sure that there's a nice smooth line in the front. So I'm just going to actually reshape this a little and get rid of this corner that's here. Only angling that up. Alright, now I want to measure how big I want the waistband to be so that I'll know how much to gather in between my points on the finished band. So from center front to the side there. So I want that to be 9 5/8. So that times 2 would be 19 1/4, if my math is right. So I need to cut a waistband, which is 19 1/4 inches plus seam allowance, and that's what the ties are going to attach to go around the back and do the drop front apron, as it were. So now I just need to mark all of these points and then cut out a waistband, transfer the markings, and then apply waistband to front and stitch the back of the skirt to the bodice, and then it'll be together. I have to finish the neckline. The very back of that neck has been done, but I need to do the front neckline on both sides. I need to trim down the center front and put a row of boning and then hand stitch eyelets so that this front can actually sort of come together with a little bit of gap, and it'll lace together underneath the dropped apron front. And then of course I also need to finish the sleeves and attach the sleeves and finish marking, balancing the waist, and putting a waistband on there. That's the center front right there. So we can now just actually unpin this entire front skirt, and then I can stitch it to a waistband, making sure to gather it up or do little pleats between the points, which I can also transfer to the other side. So I'll probably have to cut a little bit of a slit in the center front to accommodate the fact that it dips towards the center, which is how it'll sort of help balance the weight of the skirt. And now I'm marking the waistline in the back using pins to mark on the bodice where the skirts will attach. And so I'm literally just basically tracing around the edges of the skirt using pins. Because I want to make sure, as I'm marking it on the bodice, I'm not losing where the waistline is on the skirt itself. So as I'm taking the skirt away, I'm making sure to keep that waist pinned, or I should say to keep the top edge pinned. I'm going to have pins that'll go along parallel to the waistline, and then also vertical pins to mark each matching point. Today I'm working on the bodice of my Regency dress. I'm working on attaching the rest of the lining to the inside. I just have a nice lightweight white linen lining so that it's as cool and comfortable as possible. And I've attached the lining for most of the backs. I need to attach it for the front, and also the shoulder strap lining actually isn't stitched down at all right now. It's just pinned at the back shoulder, so I need to stitch the shoulder strap linings down at the back shoulders here first, and then I'm gonna start stitching around all of the front edges and the neckline. And at that point I can mark my waistline, mark all of my gather points and notches that I put in there earlier, and then really start assembling. Well, I guess I'm not sewing that sleeve, am I, baby? No. I'm gonna have to sew this sleeve. Yeah. I'm about to start stitching the skirt onto the bodice, the back of the skirt. The drop apron front gets stitched onto a waistband, which I did already. And so now I have moved on to slip stitching the skirt onto the finished bodice. So you can see I'm following the thread tracing from where I leveled the skirt while it was on the dress form. And I'll unpick all of that after the skirt is attached. Doing my best to line up these stripes. They're not completely perfect, but it's close enough. I just stitched one of the final stitches of this Regency dress, which I started almost an entire year ago. We're right now looking at the very center back of the dress where the skirt meets the bodice. Oh, kitty in my lap deciding to get up. She doesn't like that I'm talking to camera. We was having very quiet schnookle time, weren't we, Pepe? Yeah, lovely schnookle time. Oops. Yeah, she's been snoozing in my lap for the last half hour or so. It's been very delightful. I was actually doing the sewing while she was sleeping. But now that I'm talking, she's kind of like, what's going on? We're talking about the dress. Does it get the kitty cat stamp of approval? Yeah? Oh, we're settling in on top of the dress now. Okay, well.
In the end, I was quite happy with the overall fit. It was comfortable. I could wear it all day. I could do the work that I needed to do in it. And by that, I mean I literally went to work and spent a day at work in that dress. This dress everything that I had hoped that it would be? Was it cool and comfortable in the blazing Arizona heat? Did it fit? Yes. I mean, you can see the pictures for yourself. You've already seen the pictures for yourself. What am I doing? What am I saying? I'm losing all track. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much, first of all. And second of all, if you've made it this far, you probably kind of like what I'm doing here. Hopefully, knock on wood. Knock on wood. So if you've made it this far, please consider leaving a like, a little comment. Every comment, any bit of engagement, every moment of watching does help me and help my channel. So thank you very much.